So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for patiently waiting. I know that I have the unenviable task of keeping you from lunch, and I'll try to make it as quickly as possible. And hopefully, what I'm going to talk about is going to be engaging for you and will keep you here without thoughts only of lunch. So let's see if I can do that. Do we have the video ready to go? All right. All right. Okay, so when I started preparing this deck a few weeks ago, I had this entire research done about the state of the cashless economy in India, across the world, how it's going to grow in the next few years, etc., etc. I had to throw all of that out. All I can tell you now is the rules have been rewritten. We are going to see staggering growth in this area. I'm here to talk about what it takes. How did we get here in the first place? What has led to this, a special point in our time? And then, how do we build for the future? That's what I'm going to talk about here. How many of you can recognize what this is? I suspect very few in the audience looking at so many young people here would have actually been inside one. It's a library. I've been in one several times, and I will betray my age by saying that. But this is one thing. I mean, the point is that life has changed phenomenally for all of us. If you look at what used to be once quite a regular aspect of daily life, now we just do this to acquire information. We no longer need to go and browse through volumes of information in books. Now we just have it at the click of a button on our mobile phones or on our laptops. We used to rely on physical mail, and no longer. We use WhatsApp, email, Snapchat, you name it. All of that has become the norm. While all this has changed, let me just do an interesting exercise here. How many of you in the audience know one person in your life who does not have a mobile phone? Oh, there are 3 or 4 people in the audience. Okay, there are a few more. Well, you guys ought to get them mobile phones. So if I had asked the same question, let's say 7, 8 years ago, even 5 years ago, I wager that half the audience would have had their hands up. It's an indication of how much life has changed for us in the recent past, that asking a question like this just generates a handful, less than 10 responses across the room, which is filled by close to maybe 200 people here, right? But one thing hasn't changed much from time immemorial: the concept of money, the concept of when we used to have the barter system long time ago, but then it quickly, in what can only be called as a very nice illustration of this thing called decoupling, which we use in software, they decoupled the concept of value and produced an intermediary in between with the concept of money. That concept has stood the test of time until now. But life is certainly changing. This is not the time for a cash-based money system. So we are definitely moving towards a future where paper money is going to start seeing a dramatic decline. And the events of the past few weeks in India has shown us how immediate that future is. So what were some of the things that led to this point? If you look at the year 2008, all of us are very painfully aware of this. Wall Street suffered a pretty drastic collapse. What happened in that time frame is also that the inherent trust that people had in the banking system suffered a huge hit. So people started viewing the existing financial system as inherently untrustworthy. And that is one key ingredient to where we have landed up here. The other thing that, surprisingly, it's a dramatic coincidence, but it had nothing to do with the Wall Street collapse, is the advent of the smartphone. The smartphone put tremendous computing power in the hands of every single individual. And as a result of these two factors, slowly the ingredients were beginning to boil in this pot, which has brought us to where we are today. The last thing, just look at the Fed interest rate chart. If you look at the time post-2008, the Fed has maintained a monetary policy. By the Fed, I mean the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, led by Janet Yellen right now, has maintained a monetary posture that has relied on very low interest rates. Though the Fed rate has been near zero for a long, long time now. What that ended up doing is pumping enormous private equity capital towards entrepreneurs. So there was a potent mix, low trust in the existing financial system. Second was the rise of mobility. Third was the abundant availability of capital. These three factors have led us to where we are moving towards a digital economy at a breathtaking pace. So there's a quote by William Gibson. William Gibson, in addition to this quote, can be credited with another extremely important word that we all use today. He's an American-Canadian fiction writer, science fiction author. He's coined the term cyberspace as well. The future is already here. It's just that it's not evenly distributed. So what I'm going to do over the next few slides is to talk about what ingredients have always been there. Maybe we haven't read them correctly. So if you look at certain other things in the past that could have been harbingers of what was to come, think about when the semiconductor was invented. Did somebody at that time imagine the life we would be living in today? It's impossible. It's impossible to say what's going to happen a week from now or a year from now, let alone decades from now. So while these signals have always existed in our in the inherent world around us, it's not easy to read them, but I'm going to try and tie some of these threads together to show you that it's not something that happened overnight. It's always been happening. It's just that we hadn't found a way to read them and connect them all together until now. Let's take a look at smartphones. Today, every aspect of our life is being integrated with smartphones, and even the payment experience, to be honest. For us at PayPal, for example, without meaning to shamelessly plug products from my company, I'll just give you an example because it's closest to my heart. We have a strong integration with Siri as well as iMessage on iPhones, where you can do something like just tell Siri, pay $50 to person X, Y, or Z. Or Siri, request $500,000 from the CEO of the company, whatever. I'm just making it up, but it is as simple as that. The integration is flawless. It is more than talking about the product that we have. I'm using it as an example to show you that integratability with the mobile phones is something that has been happening for a while now, and it is one data point that we haven't been paying attention to from a payments perspective. So, and this is something that has always existed for a while now. For the last 2 or 3 years, you're seeing this happen. Wearables. Until now, most of the use cases that we see in wearables are, I'm a keen, avid runner. I'm a marathoner, but I also, that's one of the use cases where all my marathoning friends have smartwatches that have built-in pace trackers and things like that. The health industry is one place where the wearables have been extremely visible. Now, this wearable industry is set to take off with the tight integration of the smartphone ecosystem. We will start seeing greater and greater ways in which the payments experience will start getting integrated into the wearable experience. This is something that, again, is not something that happened today. It's been there for the last 2 or 3 years. Well, it's unfortunate that I have this slide because the incidents of the last 2 weeks are going to go against me making the claims I'm going to make in this slide. Because how many of you went to a bank today? Let's just see that. How many of you went to an ATM today? I'm shocked that nobody's raising their hands. I thought everybody. I get my daily dose of socialization these days by just standing in the long queue at the ATM, right? But notwithstanding the last few weeks, which are an aberration and that will soon pass and life will return to normal, banking is an essential aspect. Banks are not. The banking experience is increasingly being driven to a mobile experience. Almost every bank that I know offers an app through which you can transact. You can transfer money, you can pay bills, etc. And there are numerous instances where new banks are coming up where the only way to interact with the bank is through the mobile app. So this is called the mobile first banks. So this is on the rise, and this is a trend that will continue. Once we have enough paper notes in the system again, you will stop seeing those long queues, because how many of you go to a physical bank for the sheer pleasure of meeting people there and elbowing people out of a line there and getting all that? I'm guessing nobody, right? We are not masochists, hopefully. So this is another trend that has been growing. It's just that we haven't connected the dots together. Peer-to-peer lending, we've been doing this since the advent of man. We've been borrowing, and a few of us have been lending as well, to friends and family. This has been going on for a long, long time, and it's not going to stop. It's just that with the dramatic improvements in technology, the scale, the security, you're finding that new platforms are coming up which can aid and assist the peer-to-peer lending ecosystem. So this is, again, something that's been happening for a while now. The fact remains that digitization of money will only aid peer-to-peer lending. It'll make it easier. And similarly, within PayPal, we have an app called Venmo in the US, which is a social payments app, where it's as easy as using Facebook. You can just go ahead and lend money to your friends, settle bills, split bills, etc. Robo-advisors. So here's an interesting story. This has come up in the last few years as well. There are many companies in India doing this. Algorithmic investing, as it's called. In fact, PayPal, invested in a company called Acorn a few months ago, which allows people to invest with just two basic questions. How much money can you afford in a month to set aside, and what is your risk appetite? And then the interesting thing about this app is that it does something very, very clever. You go to a Starbucks, for example. You pay $2.25. If somebody were to take the 75 cents out of that bill that you're paying and then cleverly route it into an investment portfolio, would you even notice? Probably not. So what it has done for the millennial population, which is a very growing population, is that it has introduced them seamlessly and almost unconsciously into the world of investing. So this, you give this app permissions to monitor your payments, and then every time it detects spare change, it quietly routes that spare change into an investment portfolio. Small, but what it does in the background is that it aggregates all the small change that's coming across millions of people and uses algorithms to cleverly invest in the market. This is increasing. This is something that's not new. It's been there for the last few years. Again, this is increasing. And the digitization of money will only aid this ecosystem as well. And borders are blurring. The rising middle class, the ability of the middle class to afford things that were hitherto unavailable to them, the ability of the middle class to want things, right? Nobody makes a payment for the sheer joy of making a payment. People make a payment for the sheer joy of buying something that they want, whether it's a thing or a service. The fact is that all of us as human beings covet things, and sometimes these things that we want are available across borders. So the ability to transact across borders is more difficult when the currency is physical. If you have it in a digital way, then it's going to be much easier. For us, for example, in my company, PayPal, in India, we aid millions of small and medium-sized businesses of all size, transact and have access to customers across the world. In 203 different markets, we have 190 million customers. And we find that there is a growing need for people in India to transact across borders, and this need is there across the world. The ability to buy things from around the world. And again, the digitization of money has been helping this for quite some time now. It's not something that's brand new. Blockchain technology. The minute I say blockchain and people see that symbol there, they think of Bitcoin. Remember that Bitcoin is only one application of an underlying technology, which is blockchain. Blockchain is a very clever algorithm that relies on a distributed ledger to bring safety and transparency to all kinds of transactions. So if you look at how the world is going to evolve and the use cases which will become more and more relevant in the future, you can imagine areas like insurance or real estate getting a lot more transparency with the use of blockchain technology, and Bitcoin is only one application. Data. I don't think I go one day without hearing the word data used in a million ways every single context that it can be used in. Data is the new oil. Earlier you had the gold rush, followed quickly by the oil rush, and now you have the data rush. We have access to reams and reams of data, and we are constantly creating new data with every interaction that we have. You guys sitting here in this room are creating data right now. Somebody, somewhere is monitoring through the use of your phone, your mobile phones, the operating systems that you're using on them. They know that you're sitting in Park Plaza Hotel for an extended period of time, waiting for the stock to get over so that you can have lunch. Somebody knows that, and that's all data that's being collected. Now, what do you do with this data? That is more important than just having the mere fact that you have access to this data. And what is going to distinguish us in the future is our ability to use this data. So I keep telling young engineers in my organization, there are a few key technologies that are going to define your career in the future. And the ability to cleverly use data, to gather insights from it, and to inform your decision making is a key aspect of how successful you're going to be in the future. And that's one thing that has become more and more apparent in the last few years. So how do we build for the future? So we know that there were, reading the tea leaves, we know that there were several key ingredients. The future was already here. It wasn't evenly distributed, but now things are all coming together. So if you're building a payments infrastructure for the future, what are some of the key tenets you absolutely need to keep in mind as you move towards the future? So I'm going to talk about a few of those elements in the next few slides. So let's start from the bottom. You have different channels through which you can make payments. You've got the web channel, which is your laptops and your desktops. You've got the mobile channel, which is increasingly more relevant in today's world. You've got the offline channel. You still do have to go to stores once in a while, though it is becoming lesser and lesser, and with Bangalore's traffic, why not? If you can buy something online, why the hell should you go onto the road and face the traffic, right? And then you've got several new channels coming up. For example, the home devices that Google or Amazon are putting out. You can start transactions through those channels as well. So there are, and I have not even listed out all of them. So there are many, many new ones coming up. You have to start with them, and above that, you have to provide identification and authentication, because these are very key to making sure that the payment experience is one that people can trust, they can rely on. They can be identified for who they are authenticated to make sure that when the payment is happening, they have authorized this transaction. On top of that, you need to have a uniform payment experience. And I'll talk about what the uniform payment experience is in the slides to come. As long as you can architect a system that can layer along in this direction, then you're set up in the right way to capitalize on all the trends that we are seeing. So what do I mean by a uniform payment experience? It needs to be frictionless. Now, what is an example of a friction, according to me, right? And I know that different people have different opinions on this. If you look at the OTP that you get whenever you transact, like many of you, even I like the experience of an OTP, honestly. And some of the CDI, customer-driven innovation efforts that we did at PayPal for the local market, we found that in India, many people prefer getting the OTP on their mobile phones. You get an OTP, it gives you a sense of security that the transaction, that you're getting visibility into the transactions that are happening on your financial instruments, as a result of which you feel in control. Now, to me, that's an example of friction. Because what it indicates is an inherent level of untrustworthiness in the system that underlies your payment infrastructure. It means that you cannot trust the underlying infrastructure. That's why you need to come up with a mechanism like an OTP to make sure that you don't have to get into a bad place in the future, right? But what if you were to be in a world where the underlying infrastructure could be trusted? Would you still prefer the OTP then? No. There are markets, there are mature markets where there is a certain level of insurance that is provided to people. If they use a card, if it is not a transaction that they have initiated, they can dispute it and the money comes back to them. In that market, do you think people like an OTP? They don't. They look at it as friction. So I would say that being frictionless is going to become increasingly relevant as we build a payments infrastructure for the future. If possible, it should be invisible. Because like I said in an earlier slide, you don't buy something for the sheer joy of making the payment. I don't think I've ever experienced sheer joy in pulling out a note, especially these days. If I have a 100-rupee note, it's a torture to actually pull it out of my pocket and give it to somebody because you want to hold on to it. You don't have that many of them now, right? And if it is invisible, if you can just make payments happen through your intent, through your context, then you've solved that problem. You've made them seamless. You've made it an experience that you barely notice. The joy of acquiring the thing that you want to buy is what you should be focusing on. It should be habit forming. Any product that you build, the more it integrates into somebody's daily routine. You know, there is something called the toothbrush test. Is the product that you're building, does it have the characteristics that would make people want to use it at least twice a day? Assuming everybody brushes twice a day, that is. This is a constant battle with my kids. But that's just one indication. Can you make it habit forming? Can you get it to have velocity? Can you make people transact multiple times, not just succeed on the toothbrush test, but also start making it such an integral part of their life that they have to use it all the time? Like our mobile phones, how many of you are guilty, put your hands up please, of having this incorrigible need to check your email or your WhatsApp every few seconds? I've noticed many of you doing it during my talk. Don't deny it, right? And as I'm speaking, I keep reaching, oh shucks, I'm on the stage, I can't do that, right? But that is velocity for you. That's an incredible piece of magic that these apps have going for them. The ability to make people want to use them every few minutes, let alone many times a day, it is every few minutes. All right? Interesting. I just got a pop-up there. It says, health reminder, you've been watching TV for 2 hours. That's what it just said. And then you've got loyalty. Can you build loyalty? Can you make sure that people come back to you? Without, without naming any names, I think we've gotten used to this in the Indian ecosystem of cashbacks. That's no way to build loyalty. That's a very temporary thing. The minute the cashback goes away, you will find somebody else to go and get the same cashback from, or you will find a different quality to peg your loyalty at, right? So, is there a way for you to maybe use network effects, for example, which is what some of the social media apps and platforms that I'm talking about do? Is there a way to leverage that to build loyalty for your product and your payments infrastructure? So these are some of the characteristics. I spent a little bit more time than I would have preferred to on this particular slide, but I think it's important to articulate specifically what we need to do in this area. Now, this is, again, one more statement that I'm going to make. It's a bold statement, but I think events of the last few years will bear out the wisdom of these words. You have to be prepared for a platform play. Either be a platform or be on a platform. And many times you have to be both. For example, my own company, PayPal, we have a payments platform that many people can integrate into, but we also integrate into other platforms. For example, we have an integration with Facebook, through which during your exchanges with the Facebook Messenger bot, you can use PayPal to buy stuff that you see on the website. Now that is an example of being on a platform, and then the fact that we allow other people to integrate into us is an example of us being a platform. I think increasingly, the most successful companies in the world today, right? Just think of the GAFA4 or any of the big companies today. They are all platforms of varying degrees of strength and flexibility. They make people want to integrate with them because there is inherent value in the platform that other people can leverage. So it's important for us to recognize that being a platform or being an extremely clever player on an existing platform is going to be key to us succeeding in the next millennium. You also have to be a strong ecosystem player because you need to have an inherent level of trust that you build up in the ecosystem for other people to want to partner with you. Even if you have a platform that is strong, history is rife with examples of people having great platforms but no adoption because they were not good ecosystem players. So for example, the open source ecosystem is one such example. Look at all the great companies in the world today. You will notice that their greatness is also strongly linked to their vibrant contributions to the open source ecosystem. It's a great way for them to give back to the community. It's also a great way for them to cleverly embed technologies that they want other people to use into the ecosystem. So the open source ecosystem is one such example where being a strong ecosystem player is going to pay rich dividends for you and will be a harbinger for your own success. Regulatory reform. We are lucky to live in a country where I think regulation is frankly outpacing innovation. I mean, it's incredible. We have to be very happy that we are moving towards a very strong and vibrant digital India, and we at PayPal are very excited, and we are looking forward to contributing to this mission with safe and secure, transparent payments and remittances. But in general, you will find that innovation will be light years ahead of regulatory reform. There are several countries in the world that are standing out, especially in the fintech sector, in terms of regulatory reform. Singapore, for example, where we have a pretty active participation with the government to push fintech innovation in the ecosystem. In general, innovation is going to lead regulatory reform, and it's important for us to keep pushing for regulatory reform because the benefits of technology will only be available to us if the regulatory system allows the use of that technology. Otherwise, it will be a promise that can never be truly tapped into. I'll make some 10 predictions. I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to rush through them. Try to keep pace with me. I'm not going to talk through every one of them in great detail, but I'll try to just leave a little bit of a flavor as to what these predictions are. Based on what we've heard so far, I'm going to make a few predictions. Impulse buying will be the norm. Imagine a world where you are sitting in a fashion show, you watch the model on the ramp, and you admire the dress or the jewelry that he or she is wearing. And you want to buy it right then and there. It's an impulse buy. I predict that the merger of technology, content, context will be so amazing in the future that it will take a mere gesture or a click of a button to actually make it happen. This is one prediction. Oops, sorry. Appliances will reorder. You have a printer, runs low on ink, it knows how to connect to a payment system, it knows how to connect to the e-commerce system, it knows where to buy from, it will buy a new set of ink cartridges automatically. This is already happening, by the way. Smart refrigerators, which can detect how much milk you have and place an order. These kinds of things will be the norm. I see some people shaking their heads and smiling. Trust me, this will happen. Gestures will transact. I mean, we are in a world where virtual reality, augmented reality is becoming increasingly apparent. Right now, we are talking about it in terms of gaming, but it will pervade every experience in our life. Sorry. So gestures, transacting through the mere nod of a head or a blink of an eye, this is something that will come to us in the future. The ability to detect emotions and take action based on them, it is stunning. I've had a few engineers who've demonstrated some of these capabilities to me and trying to build some of this into our own systems. I was just blown away by what's already there. Give it another few years and it's going to be far more sophisticated. Hands-free payments will rule. Things like what I talked about, the Amazon Echo device or the Google Home device. These are going to start becoming an integral part of our lives, and just being able to bark orders at them to make things happen, that's going to be a key part of making payments. Digital money will permeate. Enough said about it. We're already seeing it happen. The next few years will only accelerate this trend. The wallet will transform. What I mean by that is that today, when you think about a wallet, you're typically thinking about a mobile wallet on your mobile phones. There are several other ways in which I'm sorry for the quality of the sound. For example, your keychain. So we at PayPal, we already have a product. It's a keychain which can load about 5 to 6 credit cards, and you can have a digital wallet on there. You can link your bank account to it. It's just in your pocket all the time. You pick it up, you can go to a store, it's NFC enabled, you can make payments through that. So these kinds of things are going to become the norm. Payment queues will be eliminated. Well, in this particular queue, they look a little too comfortable. I haven't had too many queues where I've sat with attractive people on chairs. So, I should have used a different picture. Maybe just taking a picture of the queue in front of the ATM as I drove to work today would have been good enough. But the point is, queuing to pay somebody, to buy something, it's just ridiculous. How many of you will agree with me? Everybody. It's ridiculous. You want to give your money to somebody and you have to bloody well stand in a line to make that happen? How bizarre is that? In an alternate universe, they would have laughed at us if we had said that that's a concept in today's world. I am going to place a bet that it is an antiquated concept. Our kids and grandkids are going to laugh if we say, hey, I used to stand for 30 minutes to pay my electricity bill at one point. I mean, we don't anymore already, but I'm just making a point. Interchange fees. Who doesn't love them? We all do. Whenever we have to buy foreign exchange, we love giving such a huge percentage of the overall transaction and fees, right? That's going to reduce. With the permeation of technology, with the ability to move money faster, quicker, more transparently, more securely, with more competition coming into the space, the ability of an intermediary to demand unreasonable fees for what is essentially a fairly trivial task is going to go down. What you're paying for in that transaction is essentially for somebody to take risk and to provide you with a convenience. Now, if that convenience is going to be provided at zero cost, and if the underlying technology can make it risk-free, then why the hell should you be paying fees to somebody to do it? So you will see a dramatic decline in interchange fees. You will see a dramatic decline in the number of companies that rely on these fees as their business model. Crowdfunding will dominate. We've got increasingly sophisticated platforms that can assess the value of an idea and make capital flow towards that idea. So this is something that we're going to see more and more. Biometrics will take over. The ability to identify people through physical characteristics and their things like retina scanning, etc. All of that is going to take more and more precedence everywhere. Quick service restaurants, fast food restaurants will really be fast, because there are ways in which you can integrate your payment system. Why is it so delayed today? Because you have to actually stand in line and pay somebody and order. What if you could order ahead and the payment was seamlessly taken care of? We actually have that. We have partnerships with chains like Starbucks in the US, where PayPal customers can order ahead as they're driving and just go and pick it up from the counter and keep walking. The payment has already happened in the background. So that's one place where queues will be eliminated and fast food is really fast. Connected cars will be commerce platforms. So here's an interesting story. Let me just spend a little more time on this. So what I mean by this is that when you sit in a car, with the advent of driverless commuting, you have a lot of time on your hands. You don't have the stress of actually having to deal with the auto rickshaw driver in front of us, or behind us, or next to us, or coming into us. You can have something else to do productively in your life. And while many people, including me, will be skeptical of a driverless car actually working in India, that will be a superhuman feat, honestly. But it will happen one day. And the car will become a platform for you to do a lot of things in your life. You will have internet connectivity. The car knows where you're going. It probably can connect to the internet and figure out if you're going to a mall, what offers are there, which stores are running specials. You can probably order ahead at restaurants from your car, things like that. The number of use cases sitting here today, we're probably limited by our own imagination. But in the future, who knows what can happen? There's an interesting story. So there's a guy called Gavin Escolar. He's an Uber driver in the US. He makes $250,000 a year not driving Uber. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of rides if he has to make that kind of money on Uber. He actually runs a jewelry store inside his car. So he's got his jewelry completely displayed. He's a jewelry designer who happens to use Uber as a platform to sell. He's not really interested in the driving. That's not how he makes his money. But he sees that, hey, that's a great way for me to access customers. So he starts driving. He's got all these things set up. He keeps quiet. People who are interested in jewelry will immediately say, hey, wow, what is this? This is a beautiful design. If they don't even notice it, people like me, the wrong kind of customer anyway. There's no point in him wasting his breath. So this is how he makes money. He's got 8 cars with drivers. All of them are mobile jewelry showrooms, which also double up as Uber cars. So that's an interesting story. That's a different spin on a connected commerce platform. Micro businesses will go digital. All of us have seen these viral images of people selling and accepting digital money today. And this is something that is just a matter of time. There's no question that this is going to happen. It's going to help the people who are running these stores, clearly. Getting access to their money and being able to do that in a seamless way and getting all these people into the financial system, inclusion, is something that we should all be looking forward to. Now, how many of you were keeping track? How many trends did I actually predict? 13. You got the number right. Yes. Somebody said 8. Thank you, sir. That means that you don't find my talk boring. You want more of it. You didn't see the slides going by. You were that interested. That's great. So there were 13 trends. Now, what is the problem with predicting these trends? The history is rife with examples of people making predictions and actually being proven horribly wrong. So let me caveat that. I'm making these predictions. I don't want you guys 10 years later to send me a tweet saying, haha, Guru, you were totally wrong. You blew that one. So I'm just making some predictions, some of which will absolutely come true and some of which may not. So the challenge, for example, here are some examples. The horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty, a fad. Right? What an ass the person must be feeling like, whoever said this. But luckily, he was alive a long time ago. He's not here to listen to us making fun of him. This is the president of the Michigan Savings Bank advising Henry Ford's lawyer, Horace Rackham, who was one of the original investors in the Ford Motor Company, saying, what the hell are you doing, taking your money and putting it into a car company? You're going to lose all this money because the horse is what we're all going to be riding in 100 years. So there are many such examples, but the best way to predict the future is to create it, invent it. Yes. Famous statement by Alan Kay, one of the computer science industry's leading experts. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. Now, is invention an insulation against making foolish predictions? Apparently not. Let me give you a few stories again. There's a world market for maybe 4 or 5 computers. Who might have said this? That's right. Thomas Watson, the IBM chairman emeritus in 1943. Boy, was he wrong. And boy, did he show very little faith in his own product, right? Well, as we've seen, there's a market for billions of computers. Cellular phones will absolutely not replace local wire systems. This was not the chairman of ITI who said that. This was Martin Cooper, the inventor of the cell phone in 1981, who said it. So as you can see, inventors are prone to making statements that go against the invention itself that they're making. But so with that in mind, let me come to the last slide that I have. No matter what technology advances we make, no matter what kinds of regulatory reform we push, no matter what kinds of frictionless, invisible, seamless payment systems we build, there is going to be one fundamental aspect underlying any payment system that we absolutely have to hit, without which it will not be successful. People and trust between them. Any payment involves people. Any payment, for it to be successful, has to have trust embedded between them. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, thank you for being so patient.